You are on the money.
7 o'clock, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Regular meeting with Rundle Town Selectmen and Rundle Budget Board. Approval of the agenda. First item I'd just like to change is that in the library, not the gym. Make that correction.
I have 4, 5, or 6 things to bring up related to this whole budget issue, questions from last time. I don't know where you want me to answer those questions, but I'm prepared to do so,
We can do that on the old business.
yeah, it's all as a result of our last meeting. I did some research, homework, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
We got the old business.
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion in regards to the budget? I mean, yeah.
As
Agenda?
amended, yeah, I'll make a motion as amended.
Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Alrighty. Approval of minutes, March 30th, 2015. Didn't notice anything there that was out of the ordinary. We got Mr. Dubois in there, correct this time?
Well, the objection.
Ms. to you.
Only if he objects.
Objection. Being referred to as.
So moved.
Second.
We're gonna move in a second. All those in favor of the draft minutes as presented? All those opposed? All right, we'll continue on. Old business. Second review of the fire department rescue department budget. There were a few questions.
Yeah, there were. How about before we do that, I try to knock off some of the other questions and that might, and then we'll pick up on that one, if that's all right with you. One of them was a discussion that we had about a snow budget, snow removal budget. About, at one point in time, this town had, inside of the public works budget, a snow removal budget separate. And remember Roger, we talked about that, et cetera. Well, we did some research on it, and it was changed, absolutely right. And it was changed back in the late 2008, I think. And unfortunately, it was changed for a reason. And therefore, you're probably not gonna be able to go back to it as you thought you might be able to. And here's the reason why. Maine Municipal, and the attorneys and the budget people all came out with a whole bunch of bulletins back then regarding this subject. And it started actually in 1987, back in the Maine Townsman. But the problem is this: if you had a snow removal budget separate, then if you had an extraordinarily tough winter, i.e. the one we just had, and you went over it, which is not uncommon because you're always guessing what your snow removal is going to be, then you're stuck. You can't finish out the season plowing without going back to town meeting. So it's an automatic back to town meeting. If you roll the snow removal budget as you currently are into the full public works budget, and you go over the line for snow removal, which you will, you have the freedom to draw off the total public works budget to finish out the winter, or to maintain, your plowing schedule or whatever. degree, because when Roger and I have talked about this a lot since he was here, it would help to some degree, because obviously the way it is now, if he spends more on snow removal than he plans, he eats into, let's call it his spring projects, right? Or eats into the budget that's remaining. Of the two evils, that's still better than being frozen at whatever that budget line is and not being able to do anything until you go back to town meeting. As you know, going back to town meeting is not easy, it takes time, you gotta post, you gotta do this, even special town meetings, etc. So you could be in a tough situation, because you could need to plow the day, and this is exaggeration, but the day after, the last storm, and he figures out, oh, I'm over, and then he has no money to plow it. If he goes halfway through and says, well, I better be safe and go back to town meeting, then it's unknown exactly what, he may not need to spend the rest of it, but he may. So,
What if he had a warrant article that allowed us to do that?
I don't know. All I know is that John Fraser, yeah, and company and everybody didn't really like the idea of not doing it this way anymore, but all the literature basically says, specifically, they talk about, the towns that had special snow.
So we've always been informed that we can overdraft the snow removal account, but you're saying we can't do that?
No.
No.
If it's in the line of the regular public works budget,
But we're still not
it's
overdrafting
fine.
the budget.
You're
Right,
fine.
right.
But if it was a separate snow removal budget, as it once was back, okay, then you might as well, it's a single line itemized budget, you can't go over it.
Wow.
And even the
We're
auditors
always, no,
said,
you can just 5% within the public
Within,
works budget.
within the full budget.
Right, but I was under the impression we could overdraft the snow removal budget.
Yeah, we always could.
Yeah, and apparently you weren't alone, but and I won't read all this to you, but the legal notes indicate that it's a practice that shouldn't happen. I wondered why it stopped, right? You had to wonder that somebody just didn't sit in town hall and say, oh, well, we're not gonna do that anymore. Somebody had to be motivated to do it for a reason, and that's what it looks like to me.
If we had a warrant article that said, if you reach the max of the snow budget, then you could, take from the
I don't think so.
from the public works budget.
I don't think we'd be able to do that.
no, and if this is what the auditors are suggesting that we do, is to keep it all in one budget, then I think we need to stay with what the auditors are suggesting.
I didn't do any legal work on this other than the research, so I don't have a lot to offer you for options. I just couldn't figure out why it was changed. Roger remember when it was changed, couldn't remember the reason. I can understand that.
But even if we did that, then it would be the same boat.
Right.
As if having it in one budget, you're just taking it from one
Right.
article to another, it doesn't gain you anything, you can't overdraft either way. That was, the plus was if we could just
Either
simply
budget.
overdraft without going to town meeting.
Right. But you overdraft, where's that come from?
You're pulling it out of your public work budget.
The overdraft,
No,
it came out of, you usually would come
Bill
out of your
would come out of the general.
fund.
Right.
Yeah,
Right, so, could you
Or
have?
undesignated.
Or undesignated, right,
Right.
so,
Undesignated doesn't, means it's there, we can take it without it going back to town meeting if we can overdraft.
right,
But that's what, I guess we were mistakenly informed, we always.
but if we can, if we can go to a town meeting after and vote for that, why couldn't that be a warrant article before?
well,
the-
because, as Jack has said, it's the timing issue.
Hmm.
We couldn't get let's say that Roger, tomorrow we have a storm and Roger's over budget, we couldn't get a town meeting in time to even get
I
that done.
understand that,
So
so
we
we
could
want to be
draft-
proactive and
No.
do it at regular town meeting and have that allowance?
Why, I don't understand the difference. If you got everything within the budget, he can use the entire budget in order to make sure he can pay for his snow
Right.
plowing.
Right,
Why would we want to have a separate article?
well,
Say you can take it.
well,
from
Roger
the
thought it would be better if he had it separated.
Only because he wanted to overdraft.
Yeah, and this is the first time in,
He wanted it as a separate budget for, and I'm not being crude when I say it, for selfish reasons, so that his remaining public works budget didn't have to eat the overdraft snowmobile budget.
But,
Snow plowing budget.
but I think the intent of the way it's set up now is that, so that this would actually buy you the time to go through the proper channels. Let's say that Roger then has to eat up, let's say it was twice what the budget was. Well, then he could go to and say, we need a special town meeting, or we need a town meeting, which is coming up in, let's say, March. We already have one coming up in March, or whatever, or
Right.
April, or whatever, May. Then he could give him a chance to change the budget, go to town meeting with that, and say, we're overdraft because of an inherently tough winter.
Let's
I
say
need
he
it for
had
the
a-
money to complete the projects that we've already agreed to do.
Let's say you had a big project plan, it was an important project in the spring.
Right.
And because of the snow budget, he couldn't get to it. You guys would have to make a decision,
Right.
either scrap the project, or, hey, let's not, that's an important project, we're planning on doing that. You know, Downing Road washout, you know, whatever.
Right.
You'd have the time to go to town meeting, which is what you just said.
Right. It buys you the time.
All right, I'm sorry I brought it up.
So MMA said that in one of their legal notes in the Townsend?
There was a, yes, in answer to the question, yes, if they go back a ways, they dealt with this apparently since '87, when it first started to come up, but it's called budget overdrafts, and here's one complete article on snow removal budgets by themselves, so, and that's May 2008, and that's about the time this happened, according to Roger, so I'm pretty sure John, well, it only makes sense, why would he change that, unless there was a red flag, you know? All right, FYI, just for your information, we do not have to discuss it, but I gave you copies of the letter I sent to the sheriff. That's ongoing. I'm trying to make sure you are aware of what's happening, and just in case this comes back in any kind of a fashion, you have history, so we're pretty clear.
So basically, we never got any advance notice from the county saying that
Nobody knows
they were
anything.
gonna be going up.
Yeah,
And this has nothing to do with the car.
no, you checked on that, thinking that it was,
Yeah.
but it isn't. No, there was an explanation by the sheriff to me on why. I think I shared that with somebody at some point in time, and it was, you know, typical story, new sheriff in town, right, you know, and looked at things differently, and the issue was based on salaries, and they're now being charged out to the actual salary of the person assigned to the area, rather than a flat, you know, salary that doesn't relate to who it is and experience-wise, so. And it makes sense, I didn't understand that, but.
Can we have a discussion on what the contract says?
Doesn't say a dollar figure.
So we need to look at that.
Doesn't
Yeah.
say a dollar
Because
figure.
this could happen year and year again, and we can't have that happen.
The reason, the conversation's been going on, you know I've had the ongoing. The reason that I referenced it in writing is because I'll get this resolved, it hasn't happened. So it was time, I thought, to make sure we set some groundwork. All right. And I gave you the latest copy of a financial printout from March, I think, just for an FYI, shows you just your accounts and whatever, and I think that's it, that needs explanation from me. So, jumping right into the fire department budget.
I didn't get that, Jack.
I redone it,
Where's the printout of the March?
right up by your elbow.
Oh, I thought that was sweet.
Get close enough, guys, now. or whatever, as you, I redid this myself. How else can I say it, okay? The chief did come in briefly, I think it was Friday, I went over some of it with him, but I wasn't sure what his schedule's gonna be, so I just basically redid it with Lisa's help. What you're gonna find is that Lisa is now working the salaries more accurately, which I told you I thought we needed to do. i.e., take actual salaries, actual FICA, actual this, actual that, which is a little more fine-tuned than what Todd presented you originally. Todd did a very simple task of, trying to get something out at the end, and he did 3%, and now we're actually figuring out on data itself. Here's some explanations of things in this. Now, manpower stays the same in this proposed budget. Just so you know, I obviously didn't do anything regarding that subject, so I take full responsibility, by the way, of messing up that full-time salary discussion. And I hope you got my email, but it wasn't really clear to me what was said to me, and I misinterpreted it. The full-time salary has always had the same percentage of increase that everybody else has had. The full-time salary person consistently puts more than 40 hours a week in. Doesn't, and my question was, well, that ought to come out of the overtime line. But it isn't overtime, because his particular contract says he has to work 53 hours a week before he can get overtime. So what happens with this person is frequently working more than 40 hours. The reason for that is, in many reasons, a lot of it is filling in for people, with per diem people who aren't going to be on their shift on time, i.e., I'm gonna be 2 hours late, I'll be there, but, and our person will cover, okay? Call-ins for this, that, and the other thing, but mostly for responsibilities that are outside of the regular workday. It doesn't fall into the overtime, as I said, because she's not in that overtime status. So what Lisa told me, this is where I misinterpreted things. Lisa told me, remember I used the word wrong? I said, oh, that figure's wrong. Lisa told me it wasn't wrong, it wasn't accurate to what we had been paying him in the past. The salary was accurate, but the expense was not. If he is running $47,000 worth of time every year, it doesn't, in my mind, make sense to budget the base salary only to have it overdrawn every year. It's a philosophy thing with me, and I say, either you budget for somebody 40 hours and hold them to 40 hours, and then that's clearly, if it goes over this, it would go into overtime if that's the case. But if it's gonna be a position that is that flexible, then you need to annually look at each year about what the 5-year pattern is, or 4 years or whatever, and try to target the actual figure that you're spending. Because you're just gonna create yourself a hole every year, and you have. It's the nature of that position. Now, one could argue, well, that's unnecessary, but it is necessary under the system that you have. If you've got 2 per diems coming in, and 10 minutes before you know, I'm exaggerating again, but 10 minutes before the per diem shift starts, he or she calls up and says, you know, I'm on my way to work, I feel like, you know, I can turn around and go home, then you've got to have some coverage, at least until somebody else can be called in or whatever.
Why wouldn't that kick down to the per diem pay at that point, though? Because he's
I don't know that, Jason, I don't know that.
That's what he's doing.
Traditionally, it's been, this person is the jump in, fill in the whole person. At his pay. That's a point.
Because the per diem and the full-time are separate pay.
Yeah.
Separate pay scales, separate budget, separate everything.
But I ask a lot of questions about,
Yep.
give me examples of what would cause the need for you to work over 40 hours. You know, and
But according to what you're saying, he's already working 53 hours.
he doesn't draw very much overtime, very, very seldom,
Okay, so.
very seldom.
You shouldn't draw in.
So to explain what you just, or try to explain, is that we have a salary here of $44,401. That's what his current salary is.
Correct.
And then there's a budget overtime of $1,000. You're saying that that's not correct? Because then where, okay, well, so then my question to you then is, where is that extra, what is entitling that extra money that he's drawing?
He's drawing it off extra hours, because that's based upon.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Body
So,
hour job.
but what are those extra hours? Can you give me an example of that? What, it can't be overtime because it's not, is he drawing from overtime
It
budget?
should be per diem, it should be
That's
drawn
what I'm saying,
off
so,
per diem.
but there's a place where he can draw that from, so in essence, his salary still is $44,401. The rest comes from whatever area he takes it from, once he meets the threshold of the 53 hours or whatever.
I won't argue that, Paul, I won't, I'm just saying, that's not how it's been. You know, when he puts those extra hours in, whatever it is throughout the year, it has basically been tagged to his line and paid out of his line. That's all I can tell you. So consequently, it floats his line over the 44,000. And what, I mean, I understand what Jason is
I
saying.
think it's incorrect.
Yeah,
because,
that's
I mean, his
that's
salary is
accounting
based
error.
on 48 hours one week, 36 hours the next. 48 one week, 36 the next. He should never go over 53, ever.
He does it very often, and this doesn't reflect that.
Because any carryover or coverage that he's doing for per diem personnel, we've already budgeted that separate.
Right.
He should be being paid out of the separate.
should be-
pool.
I think
in his-
the issue, Jason, is it's not taken out of that account. That's the only difference, I think, what we're talking here, because it has traditionally been drawn off his account, let's call it his account.
But it comes out to the same number at the end of the day.
No, it doesn't.
The per diem's lower.
Right.
So the per diem's, I mean, you didn't take.
Yeah, but it's
per
a
diem.
totally separate pay scale.
Yeah.
I mean, his license level, I don't know, his salary base pay is what, $27 an hour?
What's the per diem?
Per diem is 13, it's half the money,
No, that could be a difference. Then.
Right.
you know? So if he's doing 100 hours of overtime a year, instead of paying 2,500, we should only be paying 1,200.
And if he's covering for the per diem, you're already paying for that anyways.
Right.
You know, if he's here for an hour or two, if it's not him, somebody else is coming in and you're paying for that anyway.
At the lower pay scale.
Correct.
That's the difference of lower pay scale.
Right. Lower pay scale.
It's not uncommon to have a no-show. People get screwed up on the schedule, you know, like, oh,
Well,
man,
it's
I
not as
forgot,
common,
you
it's
know.
not as common as you think, though. I mean, it does happen, but it's not as common as you think.
No, no.
You know, and that's the way I'm thinking is that, have I, as a per diem and working at multiple places, yeah, I've double booked myself, I'm supposed to be, in one department at 8, and I get out of the other one at 7, I get a 6:30 fire call, I mean,
Right.
it happens.
That happens.
But the other thing too, for the full-time, he's also the EMA director for the town. He's the health officer for the town. I mean, he does have other meetings that he has to go to that warrants for him to be paid off of that full-time, that line.
When does that contract come up for renewal? If it's coming up soon, we could make some adjustments.
I don't think it's a contract, I think it's an employment relationship.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any written contract between the two, I'm not sure. But
Well, where did we get this 53-hour? I mean, usually when you work over 40, you
That,
block it
that's,
overtime.
that's per the main Bureau of Labor Standards for a,
You can do that.
Right,
They
for a
say, we don't have an
firefighter.
agreement.
a firefighter, right?
for a firefighter. That, it doesn't matter if you're a full-timer in Arundel, Maine, or Bedford, Maine, or Portland, that's what the
That's what the law
The
allows.
labor allows, is that it's 53 hours, a minute over 53 hours per week is when you get put
I'm
up
saying
for
that's
overtime.
what the standards of the law allows. We could say, you know, anything over 40 is OT if you wanted to say that. Of course,
You
you
could.
wouldn't want
You
to say
could.
that, but you could.
Right.
Right.
So you, within your jurisdiction,
Right.
on how you hire somebody.
Mhm.
But can we say that if he's doing his job, his normal job as a firefighter, that comes out of this salary? But if he has to stay over and be one of the per diems, then that should come out of the per diem salary, under whatever grade he is.
That's the way it is.
Can we do that?
What's the point of having a salary? That's the beauty of having a salary is you know exactly what his check's gonna be
Right.
4
I don't
years
think
from
it's
now.
gonna take care of 100% of it, based upon what you
But
just
that, but
said.
that's why we also have an overtime budget line item for him as well, or there.
Yeah, well, as I said, I mean, I checked the overline mine, and you're right, very, very seldom does he ever get into it, if at all. But, you know, but he would still be responsible, what's the word, he'd still be guided by the main labor relations law of the fireman, and he'd have to work 53 hours before he kicked into overtime. Basically what this is, I mean, I'm trying to summarize a little bit, is that you're saying, when that happens, everybody's fine, understands that, you know, situation. But when it happens, and he covers for per diem, it ought to be at a per diem rate. That's what I think this conversation is.
Okay, but now, if he goes over the 53 hours and then you pay him at the per diem rate, doesn't state law require that we pay him overtime?
Correct.
So if he loses overtime and he goes to per diem rate, he's a third of what he's regularly
Right.
getting. I'm sorry, folks, it's
But
5 o'clock. I'm
after
going
10
home.
hours a day or 8 hours a day, see you
Yeah,
later, I'm going home.
See you later, I'm going home. I'm not working for 13 when I should be getting 37. So
Be careful
find
what you
somebody
wish
else.
for.
Right.
You know.
So I don't think it would be fair to drop him to per diem pay and give up his overtime. I wouldn't do it, and I'm sure most folks here wouldn't like it.
Yeah, you've been here for 8 hours already, 8, 9, 10, whatever.
Yeah, now
Now
you're
they
dropping
wanna
pay
stay
by
later
2/3
and you're gonna
to
pay.
stay on.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that this is a budget, this isn't an employment agreement. All you're trying to do, and I'm not trying to simplify this, is have enough money in there to cover that account, okay? My objective is not to put a budget together that's consistently year after year short. All right, which is not responsible, okay, budgeting, when somebody would say, yeah, I know, every year we go over that, well, why the hell don't you, adjust your budget the best you can to be closer to the reality? Doesn't mean you're gonna give it all to them, but it means that you're not, if you budget 44 plus 3% or 12 plus 3%, you're bound to fail, to some degree.
So you take
That's,
his,
the way you handle this is, is another discussion, but I think it's appropriate to at least try to be more reasonable, responsible to what that line should be. I guess that's where my discussion is.
so you would take his salary, his hourly, and if we were doing 3%, you'd take 3% of
Yeah,
that.
automatic.
Then take that times the number of hours that he works in the 2-week period,
Just 42.
Yeah.
and then he works 42 hours a week.
Well, average, yeah.
This
Okay,
is,
so 42
yeah,
hours,
we
we
did it
then
on an
take that
annual
times-
basis.
Times annual, and you'd get an annual figure for him.
We went back and said, what's he been averaging for the last 3 years or so, you know what I mean? And because it's not a precise figure, and say, okay, one year may be this, next year may be that, next year may be this. You still got a guess component to this thing because it's not actual hours. But it's a little more data-based, and it's not wrong to start with.
What was his actual salary in 2015? Was it the
46, I believe,
46,500?
46, yeah,
46.5, something.
yeah.
So that number that you gave, the 48,071, that's a
Was 3%.
That's a 3.2%.
Right. All right, but you can see where I screwed this up, because when she told me that figure was wrong, I thought she meant that's what his salary was. And that's kind of how I brought that to you the first time. And that not what his salary was, it was, you know, what we said plus 3, but that was what was spent, which is different than salary. I know that's confusing, but anyway. I'm not making any excuses, I just didn't listen right. So,
The other line item was communication.
yeah, that was they added a cell phone, we checked on that, there was a cell phone added.
So the cell phone was $1,700 more.
That's the best answer I could get. It was a smartphone. I
Well, with
did,
the smartphone, you also, you have your monthly service
Yeah, I
plan.
was gonna say.
But
it's
then
like
you
$100
also have
a
to have
month.
the data plan.
It's $141 a month.
yeah, that's probably not unreasonable.
Well, because I know they upgraded
I pay less than that.
the cell phone, they upgraded their phone in the rescue to an iPhone.
Yeah, that's the one I think I'm talking about, actually.
And
I pay less than
We didn't.
$100 a month.
We found the down and dirty quick answer to that, we didn't do a lot of digging.
I paid $292 a month for 3 phones.
You must have the same plan the fire department has.
I go with
That's
one
probably
coverage,
a lot.
it's not Verizon.
Hydrants, there's a 3% increase, I did find that in print. Automobile insurance, I've been working with Cole Harrison and trying to allocate insurance correctly, don't count on it. They better add up to 36,000 when I'm all done, because that's what the total premium is gonna be. But it's really odd, because it hasn't been a science about, you know, each individual department's insurance. I think Todd might have made an attempt at doing that. In my simple world, and I know you can't be anymore, but I would simply budget an insurance line for the town. And I wouldn't try that cost center breakdown. I think Todd tried the cost center breakdown, which is appropriate, by the way. You know, you like to know what each department costs you, and if you should allocate, you know, that insurance cost. But it's hard to get an accurate figure. I do know, I met with them, I know what the premium's gonna be. I do know in this case, we were under budgeted from the last year, and we increased it for the new ambulance. Is that a factual figure? No. But, I talked to Jeff, common sense says, $180,000 ambulance, you better increase that line. Health insurance I want to talk about later in other budgets. You saw the group accident memo I sent out. I think that was historical. We budgeted the new insurance packages. Jeff said you don't need that, you know. So he said, he recommended we just take it out. He's been very helpful, by the way. This is the 3rd time he and I have got together, you know, working on these things. Vehicle fuel is again, an estimate. What we figured it on is that this is rock bottom, probably pricing right now. And common sense would say 18 months from now, which this budget covers, probably not gonna be rock bottom. So we took the usage so far, you know, averaged it out for the rest of the year and budgeted an increase. And that's, you know, I don't know, that's the best you can do, I mean, $3, you know, I mean, it's diesel, most of it. We had a figure in there, and you can blame me, I took it out, because it was, you know, it's like $3.09 a gallon. I said, the minute you put that in there, it's gonna create a problem, because, you know, everybody's gonna figure out, oh, it's not gonna be $3.09, oh, it's gonna be more, oh, it's gonna be less, and I said, I've done this a while, just put fuel, you know, and don't create a talking point, because who knows? I think everybody will agree it's probably at its lowest.
So the last years and the years before the budget is saying that that number that we throw in there was way off?
It would work, yeah, it has been, even with the price drop. Yeah. I can spit out the monies, but of spent, and actually, it looks to me like you'll probably be overdrawn in that line. The other subject of interest is vehicle maintenance. That, in the first draft, the cheaper, we had 17. I backed that down by 3. I did do the research, or he did with me, and we looked at where most of the maintenance budget has come from this year, and you folks were right, you called it. It's come from the old ambulance. So, I'm gonna guess if you got a new unit, you can back that, you know, that repair line down. The reason it's not any lower is, and Jason, you guys all know your equipment's getting older and older every year, so I'd be nervous about, you know, taking it down too far. But you could certainly take it down less if you got that new, you know, that new emergency vehicle. That's what I did.
Do we know, on the 2015 budget, we had planned on 244,892. Do we have a rough idea where we're gonna come in at the end of this year with that number?
Say that again?
So last year, we had budgeted 244,892.
Yes,
Where are we gonna come in this year on that number?
I can find that out.
Shouldn't we already know that stuff?
Huh?
Shouldn't we already know that stuff?
Under normal circumstances, you would.
That's why we hired an administrator.
Things are,
Well, it's kind
things
of,
are quite normal right now.
Yeah, but we would have monthly reports that would tell us.
You could, and what we've been doing, Dan, is we've been answering almost like individual questions, like, okay, where are we with fuel, let's research the fuel, let's, you know, do that. Right now, the manpower situation isn't allowing us to spit out, you know, across the board answers to those kind of questions. If that's an answer that we definitely need, then we can definitely get it. But
well, I mean, you know, this one and the Public Works Department are the two biggest
yeah.
hits, right? And to me, those, and maybe it's some of our fault, I
We-
don't know, but, you know, to me, those ought to be monitored more to make sure that they stay on budget. And I think Roger does a pretty good job with staying on budget.
Can't spend what he doesn't have.
Huh?
Can't spend what he doesn't have.
Well, you know, I mean,
We can't spend what we don't have here, either.
well, you know, with 244,892, we had budgeted 44,401 for the chief, and then, you know, where'd that money come from that's gone over that, you know, and all of these other items that, you know, we had $5,000 for fuel. Well, how much are we gonna spend on that this year? Where's all that money coming from? Where's, you know, there's a reason why we have these budgets, there's a reason why we have these line items, right? Somebody ought to be watching at it. I'm not crapping on
No,
you.
I don't feel targeted here, I know what you're saying. I know the answer to that question is yes, we can do that, because we did it. I mean, we did it for, not the whole thing, but, you know, when I said I wanna know where we are with fuel right now, okay, I could spit out exactly where we are, and then you can only say, okay, that's 2/3, divide that, and you got 2 months left, and estimate it's gonna be the same, and then you can say, well, this is the ballpark we're gonna be. That's why these numbers reflect what they reflect. It isn't, they're data-based, but, I don't have that data for you to put in your hands. It can be.
Well, we were getting those reports from Todd, weren't we? I mean,
Yeah,
and, letting us know where each line was,
Yeah,
stood, I mean.
and a percentage.
Here's the issue with that though, Norman,
What is that?
and I just say this generally for the future. They're only as good as the data that's entered into it.
Sure.
So if you're 2 months behind entering your data into it,
You're not getting a true
then
reflection.
you're not getting the true picture.
Yeah.
When we get everything all squared
But,
away
Dan-
in the town office,
I can assure you,
we
if
get
you
caught up
want
on the.
a specific number, on a specific line,
We should get
You
back
get it.
into that.
because we have the capabilities of doing it, I'll set the task to be that.
Right now, Jack is part-time, and they got crew programs.
According to what I had, that was all the old business unless
And
there's something else.
Where's the per diem budget? Where's the per diem
yeah, I
budget?
was looking for that too.
In a separate line, don't ask me why, in a separate part of the budget.
They could get back into
The
that.
per diem
We
is
should.
one of
It's
the.
in one of
It's
those
a different,
line items that we haven't done yet, it's in a, well, hold on,
Within the
Just-
town.
I'll look at on my spreadsheet. And this is, there's one of this now.
No, God, wait a minute.
I asked the same question.
It's in with the capital allotment and,
Civil services? No.
no,
You're right.
no. Like the actual road budget for road projects.
Recreation, no, I'm just,
Why isn't it included with fire?
I don't know.
Because it was a separate line item, when it was voted on for the town to have it, it was decided that it would keep that separate as opposed to, the fire department budget.
Reserves and deputy.
Someday, and I'm not being critical of anybody in the past or the present, but, someday, instead of building a town budget from the format that you have, it would be an interesting exercise to start it from scratch. Okay? And build it in a, this is gonna sound terrible, in a more sophisticated, package. Here's the problem with that. I've been in those situations where, you come in and say, doing a comparison from one year to the next is a nightmare after that. Because you're no longer doing apples to apples to apples to apples, because all of a sudden, the apple ain't there.
It's not here this year.
Huh?
I feel like it's not here this year. What's the sense of having these numbers?
No, you're still in the same, you're still in the same ballpark here, right? The format of lines haven't changed.
It seems like there's a lot of inaccuracies throughout the whole thing.
I wouldn't use the word inaccuracy, Jason, I would use the word, generalities. I think it's different, I don't think this is inaccurate, I think it's just more general.
It's under reserves and debts.
Okay, I knew it was somewhere next fall,
Per diem? Oh, yeah, figure.
yeah.
Yeah. I said that earlier.
The other thing, in defense of anybody doing a budget, and I think I've said this to you, keep in mind a budget is a planned expenditure, it's not a factual document. Okay, you're actually predicting expenses 18 months down the road in some cases, so the job of whoever it is putting the budget, never mind the format, that's a different subject. The job of whoever it is to put that is try to, plan the best they can for the money that's gonna be spent. You can do that in a general way, which I would call this somewhat general. I think it covers your subject matter fine, and unfortunately, if you're in the school business, they've gone over, this is my opinion, they've gone overboard. Where you know, if you, there's a different line for pencils than there are colored pencils, you know? And it gets to the point of that level of sophistication. And cost centers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in the middle somewhere is perhaps, you know, where you might want to go. But again, if you change it, then your annual comparisons are a disaster for that 1 year. And then you're okay if you stay, you know, line item. But how many times have I gone and said, well, this one's way, you know, this line is 15% lower because we moved that, you know, to page 10, it was on page 9 before. Well, yeah, excellent. Anyway, I'm bad one. You found it anyway, Paul, thank you. Don't ask me why, Jason, that's in that line, because would it seem to you that, or to you, I thought about it?
But it's always been,
It's a separate article.
because,
I knew it was all separate, but I
because
thought
we may want to eliminate it, that was the reason we always kept it separate.
we knew what?
Because we always wanted the opportunity, if we wanted to eliminate it. We wouldn't have it in the fire department budget, we don't want to eliminate the whole fire department budget, it's a separate item.
I'm not an expert on the fire department budget, believe me, but I do think this round 2 is probably a little more database and a little more fine-tuned. The categories are still the same. But I think if you want to look at the bottom line, it's probably better than our first crack at it.
Transfer station?
Yep, that's a good one to get into. This ought to take us to 11, 12. This is not in your regular budget format yet, because these are talking points and discussion points. Whatever you decide, or we decide, or the selectmen decide, because some of this may fall back to the selectmen, we'll plug into your budget. But let's talk about this just a little bit. This is a subject that I've been basically managing, as you know, the selectmen know. So I'm in the process of drafting a contract for the selectmen to look at that takes the waste disposal pine tree contract, extends it for a year at about $90 a month increase, or 1.5%, which is basically the index, okay? Pretty good deal, pretty standard. Landfill testing is a contract that you have with MAI. They haven't indicated any real increase. I put basically the same amount of money in there because we're gonna pick it up down the bottom anyway. Recycling cost is something that the selectmen and I have talked about. Right this minute, recycling cost is gonna cost about, let's just use round numbers, these are just round numbers, but a guesstimate of about $6,000, right? The contract that I'm working on is drafted to say, as the recycling costs drop or become more of a wash, when recycling was with no cost to it. And I'm talking cost by waste management. They're now paying to have their recycling processed. They all are, whether it's pine tree or I said waste management, but you know what I'm talking about. So wouldn't this cost drop? So it could wash back to no cost at all. It can't escalate, but it can decrease, because if the economy does something different, recycling becomes at least profitable or an even, you know, an even swap, a wash, I call it, then we're not gonna keep paying them. Our costs are gonna drop as well.
You have on here, can be covered by punch card increases.
Well, that's what would be a recommendation, at least from me, I guess, based upon what we've researched, is that you could slightly increase your punch cards, and that recycling cost would be eaten up by the increase of the punch card. Instead of charging people, one of the options was a buck, cost you a buck to recycle your stuff. And I worked not to have that happen a little bit, and tried to come up with an alternative. And it looks like your punch card price has never gone up for years and years and years. You could do it in one or two ways. You could go to 20 cents a pound rather than 15, or you could just reduce the number of punches. I would prefer that you just increase slightly the price per pound. The reason I say that is there are tons and tons of old punch cards out there. And traditionally what happens is they come out of the woodwork for years. So if you change the punch card, it may take 3 years to wash them out, you know, and get them all used up. And you wouldn't make up the 6,000. I'm stretching it. But that's an option. If it dropped and that 6,000 was not the constant, Pine Tree would reimburse you, write you a check that you could use to put back in your general account. So that's how it's good, at least the draft contract's gonna be written up. That doesn't help the citizen per se, because it doesn't go back to the citizen, it'll go back to the town. Following year, you could do it, look at it differently, but there's a chance that when oil goes up, recycling costs will drop. That's the formula. So there's a chance that you could get a reimbursement check each month or every year. Wouldn't be much, but it would be enough so that at least you wouldn't be paying, at least people wouldn't be paying for waste management to make money, the Pine Tree to make money, okay? The property insurance here again is the best we can do towards that $36,000 total bill. Building maintenance, I've upped it. Roger and I went over the building. Needs new soffits. It's got to have some trim boards that are all, you know, I mean, it's nothing major. There's a roof leak, pretty good sized roof leak around an old stack, pipe. That's $1,000 more, but you'll eat that up, I think, in materials, if you take out that bill. It's not in bad shape, but it needs some tender love and care. Then there's a canister repair, and that's pretty essential. It's very essential. It started out being, we need to do it to the point where this weekend it looks to me like we got to do it and make sure we do it quickly, because one of those cans, and if you go up there, you take a look, the one that's got the really bad door, you can't miss it. It's okay. If you look down, the bottom is all apart, and when they pick it up to dump it, the trash all comes out the bottom. So it's at almost an emergency state of repair. Roger supports fixing it, refurbishing it, because it's made out of steel that's much better steel than the new ones are. This is the last of the old ones. And Roger says after that, when they go to the level of this one, then get rid of them. You know, they're not heavy enough to actually rebuild them. Roger supports this one being rebuilt. We've had one or two done in the last 3, 4, 5 years anyway. That's roughly $5,000. Question is, don't answer this right now until we get to the last issue. Can this could be covered out of your reserve account? Because you do have a reserve account,
So we do the last one, right?
okay?
We just did one.
You just did one,
It's about $5,000. Now, here's the issue that the selectmen are faced with, and ultimately, you know, potentially, you know, a budget item, is that is the letter from MAI and DEP that says you've got about $20,000 worth of round figure, all right? All MAI did for me was, I said to John, I gotta have a budget figure, you know, give me something, you know what I mean? And he said, well, budget 20, hopefully it may not be that much, but budget 20. And that's to do the remediation work in this letter from DEP. Alright. The remediation work, in a nutshell, is capping some wells. Right, I think it's 3, where you actually have to go in, fill them full of clay, you know, cement the tops, et cetera, whatever that capping process consists of. And opening up 3 wells that aren't being tested now and set them up for testing for the future. So you're eliminating testing on 3 and you're picking up 3 that are there but haven't been in the testing cycle. And a bunch of new monitoring. There's a list here that requires us to do services for neighbors in some of the wells. That was all part of the agreement that you closed. Some things that they brought up, I think I told you, they hadn't done their homework and we found out we didn't need to do. But there is a remediation plan that's gonna have to be addressed. So I said that MAI, all right, let's be realistic about the timeline here. And there's some flexibility. Remember working with is it DEP? DEP, right? I get my D's all mixed up. The key of not getting into trouble with DEP is to show constant effort towards working towards the goal. All right? If you don't do anything, it's a technical foul. If you say, yep, we're working on it, this is what we've done so far, the referee will back off a little bit. So, John thinks you've got, at the longest, a 3-year window to tackle some of these issues. One of the suggestions that I made was, wait if you're not gonna do this tomorrow, just take a look at your budget come early June, your full Arundel town budget, see what you got for some flexibility. If you look like you're gonna be healthy, you got a town meeting coming up, you could get an article on there that allows you to, you know, grab 10 out of your current budget, if you have it. Okay? You may have it, depending on your hiring, whatever, but you may have it like in a town manager's account. Again, depends on when somebody else is coming on and what that's gonna be, but, you know, that's one line that may be, you know, a little bit in the black. So what I'm saying is, if you could pick up a little bit of that cost this year, then you're moving forward, could do some remediation work, and it wouldn't have an impact on next year's budget, except for like budgeting a little bit more in that transfer budget for the next year, and then maybe the third of it, so you could go third this year, third next, and the third the following year. If you can't pull out of this year, then you could budget maybe a half you know, this next year and a half the following year. I think you've got to start to work on the list. I don't think you have to raise $20,000 and do this all at once. That's my opinion, but I don't think you're gonna get away with not doing it because it's just gonna fester with DEP, and that usually gets you and out of their good graces, and then things don't usually go well after that.
So this remediation plan of capping 3 and then starting to monitor 3 more.
And the cost of that.
Right, so is that something that we've known about for a long time?
No, not according to MAI. Remember, they called me one day, and they got this letter before I did, remember? And they were pretty upset about it. And this is all, if you did know it way back when you closed that, it certainly has been forgotten, and it might have been said, oh, you know, this is down the road, you may, you know, this may happen, this may happen. Unfortunately, this isn't my first experience with closed landfills, even though I've been in the other business, but everybody that's got closed landfills keeps getting new surprises about their closed landfill from time to time. At least that's my common history on this.
Monitoring wells have a life to them?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
What are the new ones gonna do with the old ones?
This will never go away.
Maybe they're measuring a plume that's moving or something
Maybe.
around, I don't know. But
The other thing that I think that needs to happen, from my perspective, is that John needs to come to a meeting, you know, at least for the selectmen point of view, and get into the nuts and bolts and details of this. But I know enough right now to tell you that you've got to think about this fiscally, okay? And whether I can explain it all to you to the level that I'm comfortable, the answer is no, but I can explain to you that it's not gonna go away.
Would it be worthwhile hiring an environmental consultant to see if there are, and, you know, somebody who knows
That's
about
what,
this
that's
stuff?
what MAI does for us.
That's what
Yeah.
MAI does.
And their gain, that part of 20,000 is about 5,000 for them. I mean, they make no bones about it, but, it's either them or Ralph or Susie or Mary. You're gonna have somebody, and these are your partners that have been taking care of this and watching over it and doing the paperwork. And, I mean, there's this ongoing cost every year in your budget for, you know, engineering services from MAI. That's your landfill partner. So the more they have to do, because they're gonna benefit that. Because I asked him, I said, what's in this for you? And he said, no, probably $5,000 worth of extra work, rounding everything out. But it would be nice to have a more detailed explanation of what DEP is asking for. But you, as a budget board, you gotta decide how you wanna fund it.
So when we closed that landfill and all the engineering work was done and the DEP signed off on it, we were gonna have so many monitoring wells.
Yeah.
We did everything that they wanted, we put in the monitoring wells, we monitor them every year. Has the DEP now changed the rules, so they say, oh, well, those 3 wells up there, now you have to cap them, but you've got to put 3 more down here?
I'm not sure if they change the rules or if you have reached the pinnacle point in time where the same rules now kick in. And you know what I mean? That the timeline has reached a point where
Those wells have a time frame.
the management of this landfill may have had a series of time frames. In other words, you do all of this for 5 years, and then you have to revisit it, let's use that word. And then you get that done, and it's good for another 7 years, and then you have to revisit it. That's what I think is gonna be the answer, because I don't believe you'll ever get out from under this.
But
What?
MHI should have the answer to that though, right?
Excuse me?
Uh,
They'll have a closer answer than I just gave you, but remember, they got caught a little bit off guard too, because they, you know, I think I don't think they were ready for this because, I mean, this was their report. This is their quarterly or annual, semi-annual report that we get frequently from MAI. This is what you pay them every year for.
So who has a remediation plan?
I do.
And does MAI have it also?
Oh, yeah. I have it. This is from DEP.
The remediation plan that was done back when the landfill was closed?
No. This is the, now hear this is what you have to do. Plan.
There should be a remediation plan back when it was closed.
Yes.
That could probably explain those milestones that you just
And
explained.
MAI could do that and have the
Right,
plan.
isn't that why we hire them for stuff like that?
Yeah.
Isn't that part of,
Yeah,
so they would be able to answer that if this testing is part of the initial remediation plan?
yes. That's why I said, before you wrote a check, an explanation from MAI in more detail would make you feel a little more. But in the meantime, keeping this on a general discussion, you need to figure out some money.
So you have a tentative transfer station, proposed budget $84,957. So in actuality, we wanted to add on another $10,000.
That's your call.
It's already a 4% increase over last year, right?
I have the old one, but yeah.
Last year was, well, we voted on 80,950.
I think you're,
3.9.
4.95% increase over last year.
but you got a new component, you got that recycling charge, which is not,
That's not added into that 84 though.
no, it isn't, actually, you're right. No, the only real difference is $1,000 in maintenance and a little bit to the big contract with Pine Tree, right?
You could call it 84. If we
Actually,
fix the canister out of the reserve fund, then the recycling cost would be that 84 or 90.
Yeah,
So when they
$500
figure
bucks.
when they figure their costs, are they figuring that, the fact that they are having to pay a certain amount for those recyclables? Or is this just?
$25 a ton, what they're basing it on. That they're paying right now. If you call Stu right now,
Yeah,
say, when you bring a load of recycling to Echo Main, they're paying $25 a ton.
so we're already paying for that.
Yeah,
It's
he's
already
eating-
in here.
And they're eating it.
Well, not if it's in the 77.
No, right now they're eating it, because they're paying that right now. This is an increase that they're already absorbing. And he said if he was a betting man, it will, it probably will come down.
I missed that, but we have to include that $6,000 in the budget, don't we?
The 6,000?
Because even if it's a punch card, it's coming back to us, but we've got to take.
No, not if the citizen consumer pays for it. You raise the cost.
We're not raising it.
He
We
would
haven't
get,
decided to raise it yet.
he gets a punch card, remember? They
Right.
currently get the revenue for the punch card. So they would get that 6,000 out of the increased punch card. You pay them a contract and the punch cards.
Right.
So that's not reflected in the budget then? That's just a wash on there?
No, it's to let you know that,
Right.
it's a reason that you might wanna raise that punch card. If you don't, then you gotta budget the
Well,
6,000.
then, the misconception is that when you said that they're eating it, they're really not eating it. They're making money from the punch card. So therefore, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Well, no, he's saying
The
right
current
now.
contract.
No, I'm saying right now.
Right.
that doesn't include that recycling cost. This is the new contract going forward.
He's not charging us that $23 a ton.
But they're still getting the money even now from the punch card.
They are.
So it keeps the first number under control.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal, but it's big enough deal that he is not gonna carry it for, another year.
Are they okay with raising the punch card? There were objections to theirs before.
No, he's fine.
Because we talked about that when it really went up, and he said that he was fearful that people were gonna start going elsewhere or get their own dumpsters. Okay.
This is my personal opinion, I don't give a lot of personal opinions, but my personal opinion is, I personally, in 3 towns, killed myself trying to convince people to recycle. All right, that was part of the town's initiative, is recycle, recycle, and recycle, and, every banner we put up on the street was, please recycle. And then to turn around and say, oh, by the way, now you gotta pay for that, just sets me over the edge, personally. So if it's a punch card that has only 20 punches and for $22 instead of 25, and you don't have to pay for recycling, that's an easier pill to swallow, in my opinion. Or whatever it is, that we decide.
So-
Well, I hate to charge people recycling because it's good. People are gonna say, you just trained me to do it, now you're gonna charge me for it,
When's Roger gonna fix that canister?
Soon as we can. DJ and I looked at it again this weekend, and I put a note in Roger's box to go up and look at it. I mean, we can rent or borrow a steel one, I'm sure. But there's a really, I'm being prejudiced, but a really good company to work with. Easy and cooperative and pretty good partner. One of the reasons I'm interested in extending it is, if we extend it, it doesn't have to go out to bid. If it goes out to bid, it can't be controlled locally. It's gonna be a corporate decision in the Midwest someplace.
Yeah, well, I've gone up to bid,
And you know what's gonna happen,
they were the only ones to respond.
right? But
But if it goes out to bid and they're the only ones to respond, and it goes out corporate and a price goes up through the roof,
it will.
now, now we're really screwed.
$90 a month increase, pretty reasonable for the trash business.
So should we add at least 10 in here to get started on this remediation work that we have to do?
So it's either that or get charged $200,000 by DEP for non-compliance.
I mean, at least if we put that in the budget, it'll be in there, we can put a note so that people will know why all of a sudden they've got this extra charge.
You do the budget, I put it in.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend it. I think you need better explanation from, the engineer on what this is all about. I think I've given you the snapshot. I didn't make it up, obviously you know that.
But for something that's coming up, here it is in April, we're still working on a budget. If it's something that we're gonna have to do in 8 months' time, we need to plan for it now.
I think hoping for some extra money out of this year's budget is a little Pollyanna-ish. I mean, you may have it, but you probably want to bite the bullet, budget 10 this year, see how much you can get done in that fiscal year, have a better understanding what the second year may cost you, maybe be 15, 5 more or whatever. Because this is really a rough estimate.
Well, half of that is probably gonna be eaten up by MAI's work anyway.
Or if it's 10, yeah. At least a third, yeah.
So, I mean, to me, we ought to budget for MAI's work and then figure out exactly what they recommend and then go from there. And that would be, we would incorporate that into the next year with the projects. That's my comment.
You have an MAI line in this budget. landfill testing is really an MAI budget. If you took 10, you could put, the only thing about putting 10 is that you can write a letter to DEP.
Well,
DEP
the
and
question
say-
I have is only to answer that is that if we budget only to take care of MAI this year, that doesn't suffice DEP, that doesn't keep them off our heels.
No, but at least DEP knows we're doing something, we're not just looking the other way, right? I think
No,
that's-
that was what I was gonna say, put 10 in for remediation period, and
Right.
if you can
Give
take that old letter to DEP and say,
five to
you know.
MAI, five towards the actual DEP's recommendations, and then you got.
that might be a better letter to write.
Instead of landfill testing saying 3,900, it'd be 13,900.
What's your pleasure, 10?
I think we're pretty much in agreement with 10.
Because we already have a note under what landfill testing is, and we can put right in the note to let people know why it's going up.
Yeah.
Only say
Well, you know, I think it's clearly to meet DEP's requirements. And I do think, when you can catch your breath, asking MAI to come down to explain that would be a good exercise, as long as they don't charge you too much.
They ought to be reviewing our remediation plan to see, you know,
Yeah.
exactly where this came from.
Yeah, they did. Remember, they called me, and they'd already called DEP by the time I got the letter, you know. All right,
Town hall.
I don't know. The only piece that we got done is administrative line. We had a crack at getting the rest of it done today, but I think most of you saw my email. But things have been tough. Wendy's mom passed away over the weekend, and there's a bug going around that's knocking people down in good shape. We've been short-handed for a week, and it's a bad time to be short-handed because taxes are due, and you know, end of the first of the month activities, and the first time ever that I've seen people not able to get through into the building, out the door, was Friday. Now, maybe you've seen that, but the lobby was full, the hall was full, and they were on the doorstep. That was the day I brought over 10 grand into the bank, by the way. But,
Did you have Troy with you?
Tom, I think I brought it to the bank, Tom.
Yeah, okay.
I was, at least Simone said bring it to the bank, let me put it that way, you know.
He's going on vacation next week,
Right.
He's under suspicion.
Right.
Coast Guard from Rio.
All right, there's an eyebrow or two in this one, which probably is a good time to pass this up as well. The reason I have all these handouts seem to be so organized is that Jason made me do it, so. He's been hard on me, you know.
I got two, Jack, if you guys want.
Okay.
Exactly.
Put this aside for just a minute and take the town hall budget administration wise. You're gonna see that has a healthy increase. A bunch of reasons. Here again, you got a 3% salary increase built in, you know that, you've heard that before. But you got a new town manager salary line. That seemed like was important to at least have for now. You can always adjust it as you finish up your process, you get plenty of time, but that's pretty common when you change personnel and negotiate new contracts. You oftentimes have to beef up that line a little bit.
Now, that's only a 3% increase though.
It isn't, but the line that was in there the previous year was not precise to what you actually were paying.
Inaccurate. Sorry.
No, the estimate wasn't targeted correctly. Long story short, when your salary line goes up, your FICA workman's comp up, but that all goes up as well. The health insurance is a big hit, okay? And that caught my attention. I understood what the salary line, you took what you were paying in the past and looked at it and adjusted it, and that's not, that's more than a normal 3% of what you were paying. Because what you were paying was actually over budgeted instead of under budgeted. That doesn't happen very often. This is a piece I forgot about municipal. I learned it again today. I met with MMA on insurances, and MMA ought to, well, I was gonna say should be spanked, but I know why they do it this way, because fiscal years in towns are all over the place. You know, school fiscal years statewide are always the same. July, June, or June to July. Towns, who knows? Some have town meetings in February, some, you know, I mean, there's a lot of variation, but the insurance is January to January. The cost of insurance, you've probably heard that before. So, on January 1st of this year, you got a 7% increase in your health insurance for MMA. That's experience-based health insurance.
Yeah, this insurance has gone up over 20%.
Right. So what we've done, and you were under budgeted, so you didn't have that 7% to cover that increase. So you're gonna be under budget. So what we did was to say, all right, what is the insurance rate now? Right today? Not what you budgeted, but what is it today, till next January, go take it to January. And then we budgeted a 5% increase for the second half of next year. Right. So the reason your increase is up is that you're making up the shortfall of this year to the new figure, and then rather than have that happen to you again, could be 4, could be 9, who knows, I put 5. Said, all right, you better budget a 5% so that next January when it goes up, you can cover it. The other reason it's up is that your current town manager, not me, didn't take insurance. All right? And so you had a benefit package for him that says, look, you can have half in cash but not taking insurance. That's pretty common. It's not new to you. It's good business. All right? I budgeted a full insurance package for your new town manager. May not need it, we may know, we can adjust this, you know, whatever, but if a person comes in and says, I want insurance, then that doubles your cost, not than what you have now, because you're paying half. So in rough figures, you're paying $5,000, and now it's gonna cost you 10.
So where did you credit the cash to Todd?
It was apparently just, I don't understand your question, Jason.
So you must have figured the new town manager not to take the cash instead of the insurance?
Yeah, I figured.
So what did you do with the cash that Todd was being paid? Did that get credited salary?
No. I'm still not sure the
It's all-
question.
It's all insurance, right? Whether you pay 5 or whether you pay 10. Right, so you wouldn't credit to his salary, I mean, it's gonna be a cost to us.
But how were we paying Todd the extra, how were we paying Todd the difference then?
Well, I mean,
If he didn't opt for the insurance, he took the cash
He
option.
took cash, right?
Right.
From where?
What's he buying?
The
He's
insurance
buying
line.
He was
salary.
part of the insurance line, right?
Part of his benefit
Right.
package, right, out of the salary line for.
But it came out of the insurance line.
It came out of the health
Right,
insurance
yeah.
line.
Sorry, Jason, I didn't know that. I should have,
And that's only for individual coverage, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how else to do it right now.
Yep.
You can fine tune this, but, I mean, if you, here again, if you're gonna budget accurately or try to be more accurate, it seems like a reasonable thing to do.
I don't think salaries is enough then.
5% is a concern. But I had to try something.
Conservative, you think it's low?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. It's only for 6 months, so
I know.
it's kind of a wacky way to try to do insurance halfway through the year, increases that you don't know are coming. Bad enough for the school business, we have to wait till the last minute before you go to town meeting, before you get the rates, but at least we get them. You know? And then it holds for the whole budget year, but you get that mid-year surprise, you know?
And does any of this healthcare cost end up getting deferred by, like, the town employees?
If their insurance costs are more than the full single, yes.
Well, I mean, like, for instance, my full-time job, my company I work for didn't eat the increase of it. I ate some of it too, so that's what the employee should be eating some of it too.
I don't believe that's true here. I believe the package is a full single, let's call it that. Now, I'm not negotiating contracts for you, but one of the reasons that you may be willing to do that, I'm guessing, is that you've limited to single coverage. In many other areas, it's family, okay? And you pay like 80-20, or like in my wife's case, 70-30, but it's 70-30 of a full package. And if you stay to the single only, it's not uncommon to pay 100% of it, because you're only paying a single.
Cost them a fortune if they want family coverage.
About 19,000 a year.
Yeah, but they pay themselves out of their pocket.
Yeah, but still, regardless of this, if they're on a single package, I mean, they should be eating some of this. I work for a multi-billion-dollar company, they're not gonna eat every bit of, just because I'm single, they're not gonna eat my whole insurance policy. They pass it on to me, and that's where I feel this should be passed on to some of the employees too. If they're gonna take the insurance and, then you get it cheaper.
What's your family option?
I mean, when I was married, I went up, my insurance went up $120 a week
When you got married?
when I got married.
Yeah, that'd be a good reason not to.
But, but still, I mean, but,
Turn around and run.
but regardless, I mean, I think some of this health insurance should go back to the employees, a certain percentage should go back to the employees.
We've had that discussion a number of times,
Yeah.
and I think the position we're taking is we've got folks that we're probably not paying enough on the salary end of
Yeah.
things. And
Oh, and I can understand
and
that.
this helps them from a tax standpoint too.
Right.
So we thought we pay for the insurance
Yeah.
rather than
Right,
increase salaries, maybe to bring them in line with some of our neighboring communities here, Because we did, years ago, we used to train people and then
right, and then
we'd
go
lose,
elsewhere.
we'd lose them.
We'd lose them to a town where their salary would, they'd leave here, even if they were getting the same amount of salary, they got much better insurance coverage, so.
It's a trade-off, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
David, this is not a right, long issue.
Oh, no, absolutely.
If you got,
Yeah.
I certainly understand what you're saying, I think others do too. This is weigh it all out, you know, and look at the big picture and, figure out what's the best potential risk, you know? All right,
What'd you
So-
figure in for the new town manager?
what,
Did you have a number in there for the new town manager at what?
you know,
Yeah, I asked him for
Okay, yeah.
yeah. So, that's basically it in a nutshell. Some of that to be determined, but at least at this draft of the budget, it's in there. Another one for you. What I'll have for you next time, because as I said, we're about halfway through it, is the rest of the town hall budget, okay? The exercise that we're going through is instead of taking Todd's figures, we're starting from scratch. And that's why we're encountering, like, Todd's salary was actually higher in the budget than what he had. You know, somebody else's was lower than budget than what we had because we, you know, we're building it from data. We're just real grateful Todd gave us a starting point, you know, and it certainly has been helpful to me. This is the planning code budget. Phew. This isn't terribly complicated either. There are two additions that I know of, other than the salary changes. No stories to tell, Jason, on this one about the salaries. So it's just a straight 3%. There is $1,000 for mandatory licensing and coursework that Tad is scheduled to take this year. That's a new number, that's not gonna be annually, you know, but in a cycle of licensing and recertification, et cetera, to keep that license, he's due. So that's a new item. And it's not in here, it's actually gonna be in the town hall budget, but there's a new fireproof file, and it's not in here, but I know it's not for downstairs. And Todd told me before I leave that you're trying to replace one every year, and you have been doing that, but as I said, it's not. It ended up, I put it in the regular town hall budget. It's an upstairs piece of furniture, but it's.
We don't have vehicle maintenance and repair in here?
No, we took it out, because, to be honest, that vehicle is used by a lot of people. It's no more planning and codes than anybody else's, and I can't remember where we stuck it, but we just made it a general vehicle budget, and a lot of people use it. You know, the primary user is Jim, because he, you know, for his inspections and stuff, but it didn't make sense to just have it there. I think we put it in the general town budget, you know. I can't remember to be honest with you, I can look it up.
Anybody have any questions in regards to the planning and code enforcement?
Well, I think the cell phone budget is pretty low, and maybe the fire department and the planner should all get together.
That's because half of them upstairs use their own personal cell phones and we don't pay for them. A lot of people don't like this setup right there, you know. And rather than do that, they just use their own phone. The only drawback to that, as you know, is that whatever on this is mine. Whatever on this is public.
So which one do you talk to Hillary on?
If we weren't on film right now, I would definitely have a response to that. I'm gonna use better judgment.
That would be good, that would be good.
So did you apply a 3% across for the salaries?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, because that's only 1.1%.
Yeah, I only got a
That's a
1.1%.
1% increase for the salaries.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know the answer to that, because I just got through saying to Jason there weren't any stories to tell.
That's why I didn't question you.
Well,
It should be 154.5.
it should be a story then.
I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause,
Tell you why there's no stories to tell, because when I get back to the office, Lisa was still working on this, and we thought that I'm gonna guess she didn't tell me the story, because I don't know it.
Yeah, 154.5 is a 3%.
I will check that out. What I should have said was, I don't know any stories to tell. We just, this one didn't get done till like 5:15 till tonight, you know.
226,578.
Is it not enough, Jason?
No.
I bet the 3% is there, I bet it's 3% of what the actual salaries are, it's probably like a,
Yeah, because your budget is one, it's a solid zero number. It's like,
yeah.
should be something.
That's what I think, Paul, but I'm not.
So they can't be plugged in wrong.
So the new number is 227,686.
687.
No, I think what they're saying
No.
is that you're looking, if you're going off of the
No.
150, if you're using the 150,000 as your number, that's the wrong number.
Right,
You gotta actually take 3% backwards from this.
142.
No, it's somewhere between, it is actually,
Yeah,
that
151,
151, 670 plus
subtract it.
3%, right? That's the real number.
Of what they're
You see that
actually-
telltale is that, the telltale is that it's 150,000. She just didn't put the right number in that holder, she
Yeah.
had the wrong number in it. It's gotta be some number that's probably gonna be like.
So that's probably what was actually budgeted
47.
last year.
it was budgeted,
But it wasn't
it was budgeted.
an accurate representation of what the
So
salary
it's
is.
probably like 147 something, 2345.
What they're actually making, and she took 3% of their actual figures, so.
Lisa,
so it should be
Lisa
the-
took
Should be the
payroll
151.
and said, this is what it's costing for this
Yeah.
person.
And that's what I'm saying.
I'm not saying she didn't make mistakes, because we've been thrashing and crashing, and could have been mistakes, but Lisa's figures have been proven out to be pretty accurate.
So
So I'm gonna guess it's the 150 that's gotta be,
That's correct.
that's
Yeah.
changed.
I would make that assumption.
Yeah.
So maybe that should just be one thing to check on, just to
I
make
had,
sure.
just wrote a big note check on it. Besides, you gotta have something to come back with. right?
Well, we better be ready at town meeting, because I know one front row female that's gonna stand up and question why 2015 budget is so far off. And we better have a good explanation as to why all these salaries are
Well, let's wait till we get everything all put together and see where it goes, right? We can have that discussion once we get the final budget.
You know what's hard about that? Is, it seems like every explanation they're throwing somebody under a bus, you know? And that doesn't feel real good for the person under the bus or for the person saying it. All I can say is, when somebody they budgeted round numbers and generalities, and they weren't always specific, accurate figures to the existing employee.
Budget's projections, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the best you can do.
But I understand what you're saying.
But my point is we're gonna show a significant increase this year, when in actuality it probably isn't.
Yeah, the question, I guess, go to what he's saying is, instead of, like, 2014, 2016, the 2015 should be an actual number. We should always have an actual
Well, what we
number.
right there is a column for actual, and that might help a little bit.
Right.
Paul.
Right. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that might ward off exactly what he's talking
Yeah,
about.
as
Is
a
that,
matter of
right,
fact,
there's gonna be people that
that's
are
a
saying,
really good idea.
you know,
Yeah, the problem there, Jack, though, you're gonna be right down to the wire by the time you get those 2015 numbers, the town meeting, and I mean, get them put in some kind of a format, the town meeting's gonna be come and gone, that's just not a practical
Yeah, it's not gonna get any better. You know?
It's a lot of work unless you wanna confine it to something like salaries and,
yeah,
as, you know,
Yeah.
but even that is gonna be a lot of work, I think.
it's true.
If-
But you do have an actual number.
If anybody stands up at that town meeting and wants to know why the 2015 budget wasn't right down to the penny, I would invite them to volunteer for the budget board, and they can set it right for 2016.
There you go.
Sure as hell these numbers.
I mean, the bottom line is gonna be, you know, is our taxes going up or not, right? I mean, this may be a little bit more, and you know what, the revenues may be more, right? I mean, that's what offsets all of this, so that's why, let's get a full budget, and at that point, we can say, hey, guess what, we gotta turn this back, and we don't think the revenues are gonna cover it all, and, you know, I mean, we all in our minds think it's gonna be up, and maybe we're right, but I think we're kinda jumping the gun.
Jason is right though, and what, unfortunately what happens, it's kicking the pants.
Say that again, Jed? I missed the first part.
I know.
It
slipped out.
His head swelling?
Right.
I've had a hard day, and sometimes you just don't say things right.
I would like to see that.
The way to avoid all that is maybe the way it's been done in the past, is that you don't fine tune it in the next year's budget, and you keep the generalities. The end result is you always come out okay. It just seems strange to me when I got a guy that's making $5,000 more a year what you budget, and no corrections are ever made, or no, not corrections, adjustments are never made, you know. It just kind of rolls that same ball over and over, and then it gets harder and harder to clarify when you've been doing, you say, wow, it's been this way for 10 years, well, you know?
Well, I think you do what you can from year to year to get an accurate number. But if anybody wants to get up at town meeting and complain why we didn't have this crystal ball that could forecast a year ahead right to the penny, I mean, that's dreaming. That's not the intent of a budget.
And as he said, the only true item on this budget that we can really do is salaries. I mean, other than everything else is, you don't know. Fuel, all those other things you could guess, but no one has that crystal ball. Salaries are the only ones that we
Even
can.
salaries.
If your
Change people out.
town planner leaves in 3 months and you've got to pay
But the-
$3,000 more for a new one, who could foresee that at this stage of the game?
So again, do we have any other questions or comments in regards to planner code enforcement?
Yeah.
All right. So the rest of town hall is going to be for the next meeting?
And then some. I'll have more than just that.
Okay.
We've got to.
All right. So the next item on the agenda would be set a date for another meeting.
Jack, I just have camp repair at 72 on this agenda.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I assume that can repair was what you were talking about.
Yeah, canister repaired it.
You had
Yep.
you said 72 in the.
You have 72 in reserve.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
That's what you have in reserve.
Okay.
In reserve, okay.
Gotcha.
5,000, but you got 72 in
Good,
reserve.
okay.
I didn't
I
mention
thought
that.
you were asking me reserve, okay.
I figured somebody would ask.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sean.
That's all right, I just don't want to have to.
Okay.
Here's the sad part, I'm getting to understand this, you know? And really getting to know it pretty well, but, you know, I mean, I can remember figures now, you know, and everything, I'm thinking, oh, I've been here too long, I start
Wait a
remembering.
little
you
while
know.
longer, John.
You know, how- yeah.
Wait, I'm confused.
So we have the selectmen's meeting next week on the 13th.
You need to meet every week, if you can,
This, yeah.
because
And
time's getting shorter,
you're obligated on the 15th.
who knows?
Wednesdays.
I can't remember from what, I brought 2 calendars today, and, I am obligated on the 14th this week, next week. I'm open on the 15th.
Perfect.
Open on the 15th. Well, how about we do next meeting on the 15th of April?
That's 2 next week for the selectmen. Okay,
Why we get paid big.
yeah.
I won't be in the 15th
7 o'clock?
Yeah.
7 o'clock,
7 o'clock, same place.
all right.
You'll take care of getting the gym, getting.
Get in the school, yeah.
Library.
We'll find someplace.
And since we actually do have a few people in the audience tonight, just wanted to open it up. Anyone have any questions in regards to what we discussed tonight, or have any comments, or just gotta open it up?
Don DeWitt, when you talk about a salary, and this guy is paid 48 grand a year, that locks him into a certain amount of time. I mean, I used to be a supervisor, and I was on salary, but I didn't have a 40-hour week. But I mean, if some guys didn't come into work and I had to cover on, too bad. I'm on a salary, I'm making that amount of money, and when I take that job, I know that. So if I work 10 hours over on another shift, that's part of the salary.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's, that position that we were talking about with the fire department, that was not a salaried position.
Oh,
It's
the
just-
salary was.
We just use that, Don, as
Yeah.
euphemism. He's
Generic
an hourly-
term.
He's an hourly.
So he is an hourly employee.
He is an hourly
Yeah.
employee.
Understand,
And to be honest with you, they all are.
Yeah, everybody did,
yeah.
with the
Okay.
exception of the manager.
And that may be a discussion for the future.
And the other thing is, I asked you people last meeting, you were gonna do something for me, and you haven't said anything about it. And that was having an electrical inspector come over to my house.
Why don't I discuss that with you privately?
Okay.
Because I think you're gonna find that that has happened,
What has happened?
that your place was inspected.
It was?
Yes, it was, and footprints in the snow should help, you know,
Well,
should
they've all
help
out there
that,
now,
but
so.
there's been, I just assume talk about that privately with you.
Take that out.
No big deal.
And the lady in the back,
I'm doing a story.
you're doing a
The
story.
the Arundel budget, yeah.
Did you get the short straw, or, yeah?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do what I'm told.
Hey, can you come work for us?
Could we get your name just for the record?
Jen Gallipo.
Jen,
Do you want me to spell it?
please.
It's Galipieau.
Thanks, Jen.
See first.
What do you want to do? You don't have to answer this loud, because it's time to go home, but we got that copier issue too. So be thinking about that, because
I
that
thought there was a
2000,
service plan on the copier.
that 2008 copier,
We had made a motion at one selectman meeting not to expend more than 5,000 to replace it, right? Todd had got the ball rolling on it, I thought.
Yeah, I thought they were bringing in some
We had one,
demos to
we had
try.
one that
Didn't
was
work.
brought in as a demo and went out the door.
Yeah.
No,
But 5,000 not gonna buy you a copier.
That was a lease purchase.
lease purchase, yeah.
That would take care of it.
Yeah.
But 5,000 won't buy you one.
No, it was a lease purchase.
But, we'll talk about that, we do the town hall budget, but that's, every day that comes up in my mind is, okay, what are we gonna do with that? Because, yeah, that's one of those, I hate to say it, but hard to make believe that we're in today's world, we have to say a copy is an emergency. But if that dies, we can't operate an hour without that. So, with the stuff that's coming in, because remember, it's used for all registrations and, you know, so it's a crapshoot.
So there's no other companies out there that want to bring us down and demo? the
Oh.
thing?
Yes, we can certainly look at copiers, but, demo is one thing, used is another. The one that you had, apparently, because I talked to the lady, was a used copier, and it was turned in for a reason, because it was all money. And she hasn't been back. Don't know why, but we haven't done the homework,
Yeah.
but, I worry about that because it would be a 1-800, can we lease a copier, you know, or rent one immediately, kind of a call. It's done well, holy cow, 2008? That's phenomenal, you know.
What that count on that is for copies.
Oh, I don't even want to guess. And works. I mean, you know, but 18 months from now,
What company did we get that one from?
Xerox.
Would they like to send us a demo?
I'm sure they probably would. They're more copy salesmen than they're IT salesmen, so.
So does the, you guys have a separate printer in the office?
No,
What do you guys use? I've never paid attention, but when you want to print something from your PC?
everything goes to that copier,
Okay, so it's.
upstairs and down.
So it's a printer copier, it's tied
Fax,
in that way.
fax,
Yeah, okay,
scanner,
yeah, okay,
you know, yeah, everything.
All in one.
yeah.
Which is by far the cheapest way to go.
Yeah,
Doesn't do color. If you go color, and you should, you need to get the kind that has to have a code and be controlled color, so that it can only be turned on with
So colors are being wasted
yeah,
on like
you can set it
emails.
to default to black and.
prior approval, you know,
Black
for
and gray
people.
scale, yeah,
Because color costs a lot.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
not that I don't like discussing about copiers. However,
Nope,
Motion to adjourn.
gotta be.
do I have a second on that? All those in favor of adjourning this wonderful meeting for tonight? All those opposed, can stay here.
See, Jason,
Thank you very much.
wonderful meeting, Hero.
Did you guys talk to us after?
Give me 5 points and I'll take one.
I think they're gonna beat them anyway. I do. I think they're a better team than Duke.
Hey, that's my team, man.
Not this year.
We'll see. What time?
Wisconsin?
It's a young, quick.
Nobody's gonna beat Connecticut either, are they?
Nobody was gonna beat Kansas either, I mean Kentucky either.
No one's beating Duke on.
I'm waiting for the big scandal.
No, there was
And they're gonna find out
Gino?
5 years from now that he's been buying new, you know, cars for players or something, you know?
Gino, we.
My sister-in-law, the coach for him.
Really?
Yeah, no, he's straight by the book.
No scandal, huh? Okay.
No skeletons in the closet.
Had a Nike license.
That's where it's universe.
That's cool. That's easy.
Thanks.
No brainer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Dan.
So, some language maybe?
No, when we do that, this is supposed to be $18,000.
Yeah.
It's worded as if it's the agreement between the two code enforcement officer.
Oh,
All the time.
all right.
I'm just,
take that.
I'll fix it up and I'll send it over to you, just
Okay.
gonna format it a little bit.
Next week.
No, I'll get it to you for it.
No, for next week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
like
right,
that.
I'll get it to you. I talked to Don today and,
Oh, wait a minute.
oh yeah, I probably should do